a lot of political drama happening on both the left and the right in the United States. Pretty extraordinary things. I mean, President Trump, the first time he was impeached was over his phone call with President Zelensky. The firm that Devon Archer had with Hunter Biden was in Moscow the day that Putin took the Crimean Peninsula. And they were negotiating with the CEO of Burisma.
Thank you, Joseph, for making us cry this morning. That was very moving. Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting. Let's go live to Ukraine and Joseph Lindsley. Joe, the story this morning that I'm reading, top U.S. and European officials are concerned that Russian President Putin is factoring the 2024 U.S. presidential election into his Ukraine war plan. One official here says he has no doubt Putin is trying to hold out until the election. What are you hearing there?
Bob, good afternoon from LVIV, and this is a big topic for everyone here. And in fact, there was a story a couple of days ago in the Washington Post pointing out that, if you look at from satellite imagery back in January, the Russians did not have a lot of strong fortifications along what is now the front lines in the east and in the south. And they had several months where Ukraine was begging for tanks and jets and all kinds of weapons, several months to prepare. Now they have these incredible fortifications. We talked the past several weeks about all the landmines that have been laid to delay the Ukrainian effort. And I think, the question, and this is, almost every day now, this is what I talk about with friends and colleagues here. The questions are, is the West, are Western leaders, what is going on? Have they been naive? Have they been afraid to really go, full throttle for victory? And so they send some weapons to keep Ukraine alive, but in a way that doesn't make substantial victory possible, and the more sinister question, which we do have to ask, are there behind the scenes some people who secretly, want some kind of victory for Russia, where there could be some kind of partition in Ukraine, defense contractors who do benefit from a very long war now that our operations in Afghanistan and Ukraine are done. Afghanistan and Iraq are done. Are there people who would benefit from the long sustained war that's fought here far away from American shores? These are questions that we unfortunately we have to ask, because as we see from once Ukraine proved itself in those first days and weeks of the full-scale invasion, the support was very weak back then. And remember, I think we all forget this, but the American embassy left Ukraine several weeks before the full-scale invasion. They left in early February. We held on more firmly in Saigon in the Vietnam War, with the helicopters escaping at the last second, and in Kabul. But we left Ukraine very early, before any invasion happened. It seemed like an invitation. We also, if you look behind the scenes as well, we have a lot of political drama happening on both the left and the right in the United States. Pretty extraordinary things. President Trump, indicted, pleading not guilty and indicted once again. Remember, he was impeached over the first time he was impeached was over his phone call with President Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, not some other country. Again, Ukraine was, somehow part of that story. And then in the testimony of Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devon Archer, he has been talking about what happened in 2014, that the firm that Devon Archer had with Hunter Biden was in Moscow the day that Putin took the Crimean Peninsula. And they were negotiating with the CEO of Burisma, who was a former member of the Ukrainian government, who, as we talked about weeks before, the Ukrainian people kicked that whole government out of their country because they were sick of being controlled by pro-Russian corruption. And that government went fleeing to Moscow. Several weeks later, the former energy minister, the CEO of Burisma, is in Moscow, meeting with the son of the current vice president of the United States. We know that Burisma ended up hiring Hunter Biden, but that same day Putin took Crimea, where Burisma has its major its natural gas assets. So Burisma benefited. First, the revolution of dignity in 2014 upset the plans of those who sought to plunder from this vast and very naturally rich country. It upset their plans because the people took their country back. But then piece by piece, since 2014, they've been trying to get it back, starting with Crimea. And, as we talk about Crimea, I'm sitting here in a cafe in Lviv. A cafe, by the way, it's the whole cafe exists in honor of a fallen soldier, Dmitry. It's called the Republic Garden. It's a tribute to dissidents from the 1970s and 1980s who gathered in the same place when it was a ruined monastery. And this is where they secretly gathered to plot against the KGB and the Soviet regime. And now, once again, we're gathered here in that sort of same spirit. And across the table from me, here is a great Crimean Tatar, and her family is still in the Crimean Peninsula, many of them. And we were talking today because through the night, Ukrainians did hit some Russian depots in the Crimean Peninsula, in the Russian-occupied Ukrainian Crimean Peninsula, and also quite extraordinary news just beyond the Crimean Peninsula, past that bridge that we've heard about so many times, where there have been two explosions, one recently and one last October, is a Russian port, and I probably will mispronounce it because I speak Ukrainian and not Russian, Novorossiysk, and that's Russia's second biggest port after Sevastopol, which is in the Crimean Peninsula. And Ukrainians were able to send drones to this port. They didn't destroy any ships totally, but they were intercepted. But they did cause some damage. And this shows that Ukraine does, with its current resources, have at least the gumption and the power, the reach to begin to hit these Russian ports and bases from which Russia is terrorizing Ukraine on a daily basis. Now, what Ukraine needs is not, the long-range weapons. The UK and others have provided these Storm Shadow missiles, but what they really need is the support of the United States in saying, yes, we give you permission to go attack these bases on Russian soil. And that's what the United States, the government in Washington, has been afraid to do. And this is the pressing question. Do they really want Ukrainian victory? Are there other interests at play? We know there are other interests at play, but for the key decision makers, whose side are they really on? And for Ukrainians, there's only two sides. It's the side of freedom or the side of tyranny. And I asked my friend here, I don't know if I can quote her name, so I won't, but I said, what is it like? She has family. Her mom, grandmother, aunt are in the Crimean Peninsula now. I said, how do you feel when you hear these stories of, Ukrainians making these little incursions to Russian bases in Crimea? And she says she feels two things at the same time. She's happy that something is shaking there. In fact, there's also reports of people in the Crimean Peninsula have been lately trying to set on fire Russian recruitment offices. So we see maybe the makings of a resistance. The Crimean Tatar, the Muslim Crimean Tatar people who've been so long oppressed by the Soviet Union and now by the Putinist regime, they resist. They want to be free. When they were part of Ukraine, they were an autonomous republic. They had a lot of freedom, which they do not now have. And my friend here, she said, while she's happy to see these things shaking from the bottom, it means that there's some movement there toward freedom. She's also nervous because that's where her family lives. And, in order for Crimea to come back into freedom, it's going to have to be dangerous and violent. And so it's a very difficult situation for everyone connected there and for every Ukrainian.
As the war drags on, polls indicate support for continued funding in Ukraine and arms for Ukraine diminishes a little bit as time goes on, and that's why it's so important to hear your reports here, so we keep this war in the forefront and don't lose interest in this. And that's I know what you're up against, Joe. So we appreciate you bringing us the story, and also that complicated plot involving Hunter Biden, and it's not easy to follow, but there's a lot more to the story, isn't there?
Yeah, and the best we can do is watch, but then remember that this is really about the individual, people standing for their families and their democracy. And right around the corner from me is a wall of photographs in honor of the soldier. He was really a dreamer and an artist whose cafe I'm in, who was killed several months ago. And you think of all the investment in, with lives and limbs that have been lost, but all the money that has been spent, again, less than we really realize it is. It's usually just a valuation of old equipment from the U.S. But if that really is to be a good investment, you want to push for victory, not for a loss. And, Bob, and how quick I'll say, I had, the impact of this, like, I had the craziest dream last night, scariest dream, that I was in Russia. It was horrible. And, I was realizing that everything about me made me, a target. And at one point, I'm walking down the sidewalk and my backpack fell open. And I'm like, oh, the Russians can see, all this evidence against me. But this is how people live in occupied cities. Even if you speak a stray word of Ukrainian, you could be under threat. And this is another thing to remember, that when Russians take over, there's no freedom there. There's only hell and torture and
Did we lose Joe?
life.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah,
Bob.
Okay, there, I got you back. I was just thinking, and I worry and get upset when I have a dream where the microphone goes on and I have nothing to say. It doesn't compare to what you're thinking about over there in Ukraine, Joseph. I hope you have a peaceful weekend, and we'll talk Monday.
Thank you, Bob. Until Monday.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important, that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Ебать.